You want to take a poll on your beard?
No, I do not want to take a poll on my beard. I want to talk to you guys and get a poll from y'all.
Oh,
But since
okay.
we have some more followers, they can give me a, don't forget to like, subscribe, and put in the comments what should Cole do with his beard. We'd appreciate, or at least I would appreciate, all the feedback I can get. Do I trim it up? Do I go back to the goatee? Do I go with the stash? Let us know, people. We want to hear from you.
So
All right,
what's the
David.
topic today? Ego?
Yeah, I think it's ego's
I have
woven in
a
there.
quote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lucas has a quote for us. What you got,
Uh,
Lucas?
so this is by Carl Jung. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
All right. Carl Jung, a noted 20th century psychology guy, one of the forefathers of modern psychology. A lot of good quotes from that guy. Dave,
Heavy.
are you aware who Carl Jung is?
Yes.
Okay. Dave, instant reaction to the quote.
Um, I mean, you know me. I'm a personal experience guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to start by saying where I go in my head immediately when I hear that quote. And it was in like my crazy addiction where it was like I'm buying drugs, I'm selling drugs, I'm getting high all the time, I'm going through withdrawals all the time. I'm like so immersed in that lifestyle that like I'm getting robbed, I'm getting held at gunpoint, I've got police pulling me over at times during this um to like raid my car, rip the seats out of my car, like just because they kind of knew that I was doing something and they were trying to catch me. But at the time I was just playing this victim story was going on in my head of like, how could they dare treat me this way, like poor me, like here I am getting held at gunpoint and like I've never deserved this, you know. But it's like I'm causing all of it, and I'm choosing this path that I'm going down, which was a pretty dangerous path, but I was like so incapable of seeing that at the time. And it was just this woe is me story that I'm pitching to myself.
Do you think fate like plays a role in it, like forces outside of your control?
What now? What do you mean?
Like you talk about it like shifted now in your recovery to it's much more of a like it's I'm in control of this. It's like the decisions that I made that led to these external forces like police officers or whatever influencing me. Do you think though that there is like that fate has like a role at all in this? Like were you destined to kind of live this life as like uh someone like running from the law and all that kind of stuff?
Um, yeah, I mean, I like to think that things happen for a reason and that I went down that path for a reason. I faced all the hardship that I did for a reason. Um, to be able to like learn from it, grow from it, turn around and try to give back, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I fully agree with the quote from Carl. Like I think I'll say it like with like a little bit of like a maybe like a disclaimer. I think there's just limits to what we can make conscious. Like I don't know if we ever fully understand everything and like can conceptualize everything from a conscious standpoint. And I think there's always going to be stuff beyond our control. That's kind of like the mysteries of life. So, and I think that's kind of scary, but also kind of cool on some level too. So I do think like the addendum I would add to the quote is like, and you'll never fully be conscious. Like there's always going to be some stuff that's just beyond your control that you don't know why that happened or why you did that, or you can theorize. But I really do think it's also worth part of like the human experience. It's really worth like trying to make as much conscious as possible, like it bring as much like to the forefront as possible. So, Lucas, when you hear like, what do you think he's talking about when he describes conscious and unconscious for people who maybe don't quite understand like what he means by that? How would you define those two terms?
Mm, I don't know. I guess like unconscious being the things that probably like David was saying of like these bigger like narratives in my head. All people are bad. Nobody can be trusted. Everyone's out to get me. I'm just a victim. Like that kind of stuff that like I don't necessarily consciously think that. That thought doesn't come into my brain. Like I'm a victim, but the thoughts do come that I think extrapolate from that are like, oh, these cops just have it out for me and they never go for this guy and he's actually way worse and actually doing stuff and I'm like a good person. I don't even know why this is happening to me. So I think that's like kind of the difference. And once I pull like if I can lump those things together of like, all right, there's like a narrative there, and then kind of summarize that narrative with like I'm a victim, then challenge it with am I really a victim, or like what are all the good things that happened to me, and is there any reason to explain? Because like I love the cops example David brought up, because from 15 to 25 I probably had a run in with law enforcement every 6 months, and probably one out of two times that I dealt with them was some kind of legal charges, like some kind of consequence. And then since getting sober, like you would think if that narrative was true, the cops are out to get me. They're just always wanting to search my vehicle and look for stuff and whatever. You would think that I've probably been searched a lot in recovery. I've now been in, so I was in addiction for 10 years. I've now been in recovery for 11. I have not been searched once. I've not had anybody even think that I was doing drugs or alcohol, or I've been through DUI checkpoints. I've had cops pull me over. I've gotten a couple speeding tickets for sure. I've been in like one not at fault accident, but it's just interesting that like what changed. And I think some of it was like that narrative, and the other part is the behavior around it. That like, yeah, when you're rolling around doing drugs, selling drugs, buying drugs, going into sketchy areas, riding with six people in your car, like that just kind of looks like who cops might want to pull over and think that guy might be up to something. And when you're not doing all that stuff, it's crazy that, so it's like, so was I a victim, or was my behavior directly tied to that? And probably more my behavior than the narrative. I feel like the narrative just excused the behavior. So then the behavior continued, and therefore the narrative continued, and it makes like this nasty cycle. So it's like, I don't know which one comes first, the narrative or the behavior, but I think they both have to be smashed and kind of done away with for something new to come forth outside of that. That's probably more nuanced, of just like, I'm not a victim. I'm also not like perfect, and bad stuff happens to good people all the time. And is it even a bad thing? And this will be the last thing, and then I'll shut up. I think, Cole, you brought this up on a previous podcast, but I was just listening to someone say it the other day, where it's like, are things like good or bad? And it's the guy who, they're like, it's a father and his son, and they're farmers in like rural China, and they're like not making any money, and they have like one horse to pull the plow, and the horse runs off, and they're like, oh, what a terrible thing. And the dad's like, well, maybe. And then, you know, the next day the horse comes back with like 100 horses with it. And they're like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. And he's like, yeah, maybe. And then the next day the son's on the horse, and he's like, doesn't know how to ride a horse because he's a farmer. So he falls off and breaks his leg. And it's like, that's so terrible. Your only son, the only one who can work the farm. Like, that's such a terrible thing. And dad's like, maybe. And then the next day the Chinese military comes through to recruit every like young man who can fight in war. And they don't take his son because his leg's broken, and everyone in that war dies. And so it's like, what a wonderful thing. He's like, maybe. And, you know, so it's just like, there's so many things that like, is my addiction a terrible thing? Maybe. It like gave me a lot of experience and insight into a pretty specific problem that I can help other people with today, that if I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't be as able to help them as I am otherwise. So it's like, that's kind of a good thing. So I feel like it's just all like, I see what I want to see. I hear what I want to hear. I think what I want to think. I feel what I want to feel, you know, and it just challenging that to be like, if all that stuff's true, then do I want to see positive? Do I want to hear positive? Or do I want to see and hear negative? And today I just try to skew more positive and like trying to see the good in things rather than the bad, because it's all there and it's just what you want to see.
Yeah, it's like taking this approach of just being like very just neutral and present. But there's a difference, because this quote also makes me think of the other saying of you can't see the forest for the trees. Like, you're so mired in it you know, that you can't, all you can see is like the cops are always after me, or, you know, my horse ran away, whatever the situation is. You can't see the bigger picture and just like take life as it comes and try to be somewhat objective about it, you know? And I think that's a really difficult thing to do, because it's like two different forms of being present. You're very present when a cop is pulling you over and you have drugs in your car. Like you're very like, oh crap, you know what I mean? Like this is happening right now. Like you're very like in the moment. But the present that we're talking about, or at least that Carl Jung is talking about, is to like take that moment and then pull back big picture, and like, how did this come to be? I have to consider past, I have to consider forces beyond my control, I have to consider like, you know, kind of like they talk about it in therapy, of kind of like pulling back and almost like imagine you're like a satellite or a plane looking down at your life, and you can see yourself, like the decisions you made that kind of got you to here in this exact moment, right? And like becoming aware of that. Like that requires like a lot of humility. And I think that's where we get into this ego idea of like, they talk about it in recovery, of like death of ego. And I'm curious like what that means to you guys. Um, and is that some of what Carl Jung is saying here, is like letting go of your ego, which is like you can't see past the trees, right? And you're just so mired in your world and not being able to see the bigger picture. Like did you guys have like an ego death in your recovery, or not? I mean, where did that land with you guys? I've just heard people say that over the years.
Let's not get crazy and call it an ego death. That feels so final and like I've made it and everything's all good now and I don't have an ego anymore. But I do think there's like a challenging of the ego that comes with successful recovery, that I think you have to, I think I have to be able to like see my part in things. And that's what I really think the ego part is, especially relating to this, is just seeing like my part in it. And that's what I would always excuse to satiate my ego, is that like I don't have a part in it. I'm perfect. I'm good. I don't do anything wrong, and it's everyone else. That's like what I do to excuse my ego and not take the hit. And when I take accountability for like what my part is and what I could do better and where I messed up, that's what I avoid, because it hurts the ego. But that's what's good for me, because then I get to change my behavior, which actually does have the most impact on changing a situation. Not guaranteed, not all the time, doesn't totally fix anything. But that's like the only thing I can control is my behavior, my perspective, my attitude, my outlook.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Everything Lucas just said. And I think another big component of it was tying my ego to other people's successes, of like, well, I live in this kind of house. And it's like, nah, that's your mom and dad's house. And I drive this kind of car. And it's like, well, your mom and dad bought you that car when you turned 16, you know? So like coming to a place of realization where, yeah, I think that's a stretch to call it death of ego, but more of a realization of ego, of how bad things have gotten and how delusional I was around like my part in things, and even what I had to offer people versus really what my parents or my family or my friends had to offer people. And then I would just like kind of lumped myself into that category. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense.
That's why I think it's such a raw deal for like even the guys we work with at GT are the ones I normally think about. Of, you know, you go from somewhere between 18 and 22 is like our average guy coming to us, and they live in their parents' house that's, you know, pretty nice, and they've worked their whole lives to have that house, their parents' cars, their parents' quality of life, all that kind of stuff. And then what are we pitching them? We're like, you go get a job that you can get. So this is their starting job. So it's like Home Depot, Lowe's, nothing wrong with any of those places, but that's like way different from normally where their parents work at the end of their careers to have this house and all the stuff. So then they have the money that comes from that job, and it's like that gets them this apartment, this car payment, this cell phone bill, you know, like it's a very different, once you take on that accountability of like, well, this is what I can get. That's why I avoided it. And I wanted to stay at my parents' house because I wanted to live that kind of life, not the kind of life that I could sustain and I could make work, because it was so much lower. And it's just a big disparity there for some people. For some people, they grow up really tough and trailer parks, or don't even have parents around or whatever. And I feel like a lot of times hear those people go launch maybe better or more successfully out of that, because they're like, I want something more than what I had. And they see as like launching is the only way to get that. Whereas for other people, it's like the safer option is to stay at home, and launching is the scary thing that's going to suck for a while before it gets better.
Hmm. Yeah, I think, I'm trying to think of like a common theme between people who maybe come from like, well, just maybe people who are just very internally motivated, depending on just no matter where they come from on to like the economic spectrum. Um, and I feel like those people have a lot of like resiliency, like they've learned to be resilient and to like do the hard stuff and maybe know why they're doing the hard stuff too, so they have like some intentionality and purpose in that. Because what I think is if you're doing it just, but I'm trying to be a doctor just because my dad was a doctor, or I'm trying to be a lawyer because my mom was a lawyer. I think that fades over time, right? But there's like an internal motivation, and there's also like an understanding that I can get through hard stuff. So no matter where you are, like if you grew up in the country club or you grew up like in the trailer park, wherever in between, I think if you were set up in life, by your parents or just the people around you to like learn to push through hard stuff, it's where you develop that resiliency. But I think that's really hard to do as a parent. I mean, having little kids myself, it's really hard watching them struggle, and it's also it's messy. You know what I mean? Like this morning, for example. This is like a small example, but it's the same thing. Like I was making some scrambled eggs. My kids are really into cracking eggs right now. And I'm like, hey, girls, y'all want to come crack the eggs? And they come, and I just feel this anxiety within me and like not really wanting them to crack the eggs, because it's going to probably miss the pan or they're going to get shells in the egg. And I have to like get that out. And it's like anxiety comes up. And I'm like, just a feeling of like, I'll just do it. I'll just do it, because I don't want to have to deal with like the mess, quote unquote, the mess that's going to be made. And I think as parents, we have to be very honest with ourselves that very often we're looking to avoid conflict, we're looking to avoid the mess. So we step in and do this stuff for our kids. And we don't think about big picture is really good for our kids to learn how to crack their own eggs. And I'm using this metaphorically, obviously, it's an analogy. But yeah, I think but the only way to get there is as a parent, you have to make your unconscious conscious. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I have this feeling of stress. I don't want them to create struggle, shells and eggs. I don't want them to create a mess. I'll just do this for them. What am I doing? Like I can like step back and I can handle whatever mess is made. It's going to be okay. You know what I mean? And ultimately the big picture, right? Seeing the forest is that they learn something and then they can like carry that forward. And eventually if it's a Saturday morning and I'm sleeping in, they can get up and crack their own eggs to make their own scrambled eggs for breakfast. Like they're the big picture goal here. But you have to like it takes a lot of humility in that moment and a lot of like thinking deep about it instead of just jumping in and grabbing control.
It goes back to last week too, of like being a therapist, being a professional, whatever. Like you kind of got to be bad at something before you can be good at it, and like that's just part of it. And so if there's someone behind you that's trying to protect you from being bad at anything, you'll never be good at anything. And even if you are, it'll just be given to you because you just always had these kid gloves and this force field around you kind of protecting you. And it makes me think of another quote that's been going around more recently that I've seen it, but it's face your demons or they'll raise your children. And I think about that too, of like, I have to work on my own stuff or else it's going to come out on my kids and affect them. And I'm going to kind of pass that stuff on to them because now that's what they're seeing, hearing, believing, feeling. But all of the like protecting my kids is like all about me, especially I love the egg example because it's like, who gets hurt? Like when I protect my son from like jumping off of something really high, it's like, well, he could theoretically like land on his neck, break his neck. Like it could be really bad for him. I am actually protecting him.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's the same part of my brain that gets like enabled when it's like the eggs. So it feels like it's life and death and like I'm really protecting them. But when I can break it down, and this goes back to the ego thing of kind of just being more honest with myself, it's like, this is about me. It's not about them. It's because I don't want to clean up eggs and I don't want to pick out shells, not because of anything to do with them. It's all about me.
Or rush my son to the hospital.
Yeah, that's if it's the neck
And that's the
breaking
thing.
stuff.
Like Lucas is right. It come from like it feels very similar, like of where it's like originating in your brain, but that's where you have to get very honest with yourself that it's not the same at all. Because I'll add on to that story. This is all true. Like so, like I can have that like awareness in that moment of no, let them crack the eggs. This is good for them. It's okay if it makes a mess. We will clean it up. It will be fine. Right? Not 90 seconds later, both kids have decided they're going to get like they're just having like breakfast. And it's just like get a fork. They've decided that they want to do a full on breakfast, and they're getting napkins out, they're getting knives, spoons, forks out, they're getting this whole thing because they're trying to fix this like fancy breakfast. And I'm like, put those back. All you need is a fork. And I say like, I don't want to have to clean up all this extra silverware. And I take them from my kids. And I'm like, here, just get a fork. It's all you need for breakfast this morning. And it's like once again, it's like it's constant, man. Like it is so constant where your ego and your self-protection comes up that I can like catch it in one moment, let them crack the eggs, and not 90 seconds later, I'm like, no, I don't want to have to deal with having extra dishes. So just get a fork and like taking the spoon and knives like out of my kids' hands and putting them back in the drawer because I don't want to deal with like extra dirty silverware. And the other thing too, even if I say it, it hurts. It hurts like hearing it later where I'm like, oh, I do not feel good saying that. Like I feel kind of gross about it. It feels it's easier to like hide that. I don't want to share that. And that's like a reminder to myself, like it's okay that it feels like gross and stuff. That's part of like making the unconscious conscious. Like it is not necessarily a pretty process. It doesn't feel great, you know? So I have empathy for people who really struggle with doing that. And I can have some empathy for myself why it's so hard. But man, it doesn't feel good at all,
Yeah.
you know?
I think that's why it's so important to just keep people around you who can call that stuff out.
Mhm.
Like, and that's why you've brought it up several times of you go to therapy. I go to therapy. Like whether it's therapy or whether it's our friend groups, but like people around you that can challenge you. Because the better something makes us feel, the less we want to like make the subconscious conscious. And like worst case being like drugs. Drugs made me feel really good. So I never wanted to look at the problems they were causing for me. And it took a lot of people constantly bringing it to my attention, being like, bro, your life's a wreck. It's a dumpster fire and you need to change it, all the way to like a not so serious matter, but like the egg scenario, of like it makes you feel better to like do it yourself and like take over for your kids. And but it's hard for me to catch it, so I need people to I need my therapist to say like, bro, did you do that the right way? So that I rethink it through and can work on those demons.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, the more you dig into it and the more you do it, I feel like the better you get at it. At least the process of doing it. Like the first 4-step I ever did was so, I mean, it was like oil and water. Like when it got to like, I could do the first column, like everyone who wronged me, second column, what they did, no problem. I can go into a lot of detail there of every way that they wronged me. Third column, like what did it affect in me? That got a little harder where it was like, no, they're just an asshole and a dickhead and a bitch and I hate them. And they were like, no, but what did it like affect in you? And it's like, it was just annoying. It's like, dig deeper. And then getting down to like the deeper part of me that was like hurt by it and why it was hurt by it. That got a little hard. And then the fourth column, dude, I mean, I looked at my schmonzer like for every single one of those and was just like, I don't see where this is on me. Like I feel like that's on them. And he's like, I remember just seeing the look in his face and like now I can like recognize it. But at the time I didn't, of just like panic of like, dude, this guy is not going to, like, he's not even moving an inch towards that something could maybe be on him or maybe his fault or maybe he could have done something better. But then when I got maybe halfway through, I started to feel kind of like empowered by it of like, because it was like giving me this power back of like, all right, I can recognize these things that I did that I can change. And then that changes my outcome. There was somewhere in it, the beginning was like really tough, but somewhere it kind of started to pick up steam and it felt like empowering and kind of good to do it. Like it felt cathartic. And I think that's how it is today. Not that I still can't fall short or not want things to be my fault, but I'm more into the solution. The solution kind of, the medicine tastes better to me today. at first it was really bitter and nasty, and I fought it like hell.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing I respect the most. And not only respect, but I also have like envy for people that I, know and love who are like been in recovery for a long time at their ability to say like that was my bad or let me consider like how I messed that up. Um, because I feel like that is like definitely a gift of recovery. Because if you don't have those experiences, I think it's just way harder, at least for me. Like it's just way easier for me to go to defensiveness and not to see like why I'm doing the things I do, uh and justify like I can justify this, I can justify that. Like I can even justify like the egg. I could justify taking the silverware, and be like, well, I'll let him have to do the eggs, and I got, it's gonna make it more on me. And who has to do all these dishes? It's me, and it's gonna be a mess later. And just justify, 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 and like going through the schmeps, and like having the ability to like see it and really work it with somebody that you like, you have their confidence is really cool. Like it's really, really cool. Because I think to your point, David, therapy only works as well as like if I can even know what to sit down and say to my therapist, if I can even recognize that, hey, when I took the silverware, that was a problem. And usually the only way I come to that realization is like I've had like disagreements in my life where I've like been listening to other people and being able to like, wait, I kind of do that same thing too, like it takes a lot of self reflection and like humility to even get to that place, to even know what to share in therapy. So it's just a lot going on there. And I think it's really hard for whatever reason, a lot of reasons probably. I think it's just really hard in like our society to do that.
Well, it's
Yeah.
also like a pick your hard kind of type thing. Is what
Hmm.
it he was making me think of when you're talking about it. Of like, it's hard to diet, it's hard to be obese, it's hard to budget, but it's hard to be in crippling debt. It's hard to be accountable, and it's also really hard to be a victim like all the time and just walk around and blame everything on everyone else. Like that's a hard life because you feel I'll say I feel terrible when I just everything's everyone else's fault, everything's being done to me. Like that is not a good feeling as I'm walking around in life. And it's also not a good feeling to take accountability. But after I take accountability, I feel much better than after I blame my problems on everyone else. I don't really like feel that much better sustainably long term.
Yeah.
I was in the car this morning riding around, and I had the thought that or a quote. It was like a made up quote that doesn't apply to everything, but I was trying to make it apply to everything in my head, and it was like the quicker the fix, the greater the consequence. And like when I think of if I take that quote and I apply it to my addiction, like that is very true. Like I got my quick fix and then I had really bad consequences because I did these drugs to fix the problem. Or if I, um, I wanted to get big. Then into my recovery, I wanted to get really big in the gym and I wanted a quick fix. So I started taking steroids. Well, then I started having muscle problems and like my muscles couldn't keep up with the growth or my bones couldn't. So I'm like having back problems and knee problems. And it's like, okay, I tried to do this quick fix and I got a big consequence. And then, I'm even applying it to what the story that Cole just gave of like, I want this quick fix. I don't want my kids to crack the eggs. I'm just going to do it for them. And then the consequence is it prolongs them from being able to be in the kitchen and cooking up their own eggs and letting Cole sleep in. So, I mean, it does work with a lot of things. Maybe not everything. It may not be a general, like a blanket quote you could throw on everything, but it made a lot of sense to me um, this morning as I was thinking through it. And then it applies to almost everything we're talking about right now.
Hmm. Yeah,
For
there's like
sure.
stages of it too. There's like a blindness to it at first where you can't see. It's just the unconscious part. Like you're kind of like blind and you don't even realize like what you're doing. It's creating problems. And then coming to that realization, right? It's shifting from the unconscious to conscious. It's very like painful, very humbling, and just gives you this like gross feeling. But then there is like a reward at the end of that where it's like feeling very steadfast and resolute in like what you're doing. Like there's this it's very principled and that's very grounding, I think. And I think sometimes we forget that. Like we forget there is like a promised land at the end of that, right? Like there's like a reward at the end of that thing. It's like, man, like it's really like resolute, and there can be some real, and it maybe takes years to get, right? But there can be like a real confidence that comes into play there, and stability. So I don't know. I know for me, like sometimes I get real caught up in the humility and the pain that the pain of like having to like make the unconscious conscious. Like it's really just it hurts on some level because it goes against my narratives about who I am. But then like once I get through the other side, like there is a bit of a peace that can be found there, you know.
And with that quote, what made me think about it this weekend was I was talking to somebody and we kind of came to together that the unconscious thought that like rules their life is that people can't be trusted and like everyone's out for themselves. And that's like one of the most perfect ones for that quote because you can see how that will dictate your life. And then you'll call it fate of like, you think people can't be trusted. So then you're like, all right, they're about to screw me over as soon as they can. So I need to screw them over first. So now I'm screwing over people in my life. So they're screwing me back, which then makes me be like, see, people can't be trusted. They screw you over. And like you can just see how it just makes like this nasty cycle that until you address that first underlying thought that it's like, dude, two people screwed you over when you were a kid. That's what happened. And you need to like let go of that. Because look at all these people around you that don't screw you over. And that you've like even kind of tried to force their hand to screw you over by being nasty to them. And they've still not done it back. That's like enough evidence to counter this idea that you have and let go of that. But it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I feel like for stuff like that, and like you said, Cole, you'll never do it perfectly, but I feel like it's the same thing as the ego, like death. I don't think you'll ever kill it. You just need to strive to kill it. You just need to strive to make the unconscious conscious, to strive to be like a better person. It's about the
Yeah,
journey, not the destination, guys.
yeah, for sure. One thing
Just
I will say
dropping
real quick,
heaters.
a little tip I think that has helped me really make the unconscious conscious is doing an activity called the morning pages. This is something I've mentioned before. It's something my wife put me on. It's where I'll sit down in the morning, and I don't do this every morning by any stretch of the imagination, but the idea is, and I sit down, I just write, just literally like put pen to paper and just write. And it's not exactly journaling. It can be kind of messy, and you kind of just let whatever come out. And sometimes it can be just like, I don't know what to say. And you literally write, I don't know what to say, and you're not really trying to filter it. But what I have found in that is it is this like active process that is making like the things I'm not aware of or that maybe I don't even recognize are like bothering me or concerning me. It brings it forward. So I know we talked about like sponsors and therapists and all that kind of stuff. Like, but I think this is another like way that I have found to be really helpful to try to make like the things that I push down and don't really want to see or can't see to help bring it forward. And all it takes is like a pen and paper. So sit down and write for like 5, 10, 15 minutes. Maybe try to get like a certain like number of pages that you write. Do it to your hand kind of starts to cramp a little bit, and then just leave it be. Don't judge it. Just leave it be and see what comes up. So I have found that to be a really like helpful thing over the last several months that I've been working on. So just want to throw that out there. It's called the morning pages.
Nice.
Yeah.
Makes it real.
Yeah.
Cool. We want to end right there with a good piece of advice, dropping it on the people from Cole.
Sure thing.
Like, subscribe, let us know in the comments what you think. Tell me what I should do with my beard. Let's see what else we got. Is that it today?
That's it.
That's it. All right.